that it can be sent out. All right, so thank you to everyone who came today. I'm really appreciative of you guys taking the time. I was appreciative for my site senators for taking the time to come and share some of this information. So just kind of gonna give an overview of what's going to happen today. So I'm gonna kind of introduce what the purpose of this event is. I'm gonna answer some of the questions that you guys provided on some of the links. Each of my site senators is gonna give a short presentation on their site, and then we'll have time for some Q&As. So the site senators are from each of our main core sites. They are the locations that students can currently complete their core rotations. Affiliate sites for electives. So some of you guys have heard that people, like I'm at Staten Island right now, some people are kind of all over the place for electives. You cannot do your cores there, and you can also not do your cores at non-affiliated sites. So these sites are essentially your only options to be doing your cores. I would also kind of like to urge, especially in the question and answers section, to kind of urge away from CBSE and Step 1. There is a session that's held by Clinical Student Affairs, which also encompasses a lot of the SGA members on the clinical side, who's going to talk to you about some of the CBSA or CBSE tips and some of the Step 1 tips. Just a note of how to get scheduled for Step 1, because that was a pretty highly asked question. So after you, if someone can admit whoever that was, there we go. So how you get scheduled for clinicals, after you pass CBSE, you're going to submit that form to schedule for Step 1. You send that in through ECFMG. There's a Step 1 permit that's about $1,000. Once you take Step 1, it takes about 10 to up to like 30 days to get your score. You're going to send that to exam administration, and exam administration is going to send you back a document where you can then list your site preferences, and they will offer you a track within the next business days. Your preferences are preferences. They are not required to give you any of the 5 that you put. They can technically offer you anything. It can be a track that has, you can go to Miami and New York for your cores. I know quite a few people that have had to move around for them. And the only rule is that you must start within 90 days of passing Step. So you can't keep declining site offers, because per our student handbook, you are required to start within those 90 days from passing Step. Just kind of the overall of what your 3rd and 4th year is going to look like. So your core rotations are going to be 48 weeks. Some people, it does take longer than that in terms of calendar weeks, because certain sites do have breaks built in, where they have like 1 to 2 weeks off for Christmas, and some of them have summer breaks. So that'll extend your total amount of weeks, but you are only in clinical rotations for core rotations for a total of 48 weeks, 12 weeks IM, 12 weeks surgery, 6 weeks family medicine, 6 weeks peds, 6 weeks psych, and 6 weeks OB. At the end of every core, you'll have a shelf exam. And a shelf exam is an NBME exam that consists of about 110 questions. And they're very similar to how CBSE is. And you'll get your score usually about 2 weeks later. For your elective rotations, you will have a mandatory total of 42 weeks, which will bring your total number of rotations for medical school up to 90 weeks. Some of the requirements for your 4th year is 10 weeks have to be ACGME certified, which means that 10 weeks of your elective rotations, you have to do them at a site that has a residency program in what you're rotating in. And 8 weeks have to be IM related. There are a lot of things that fall into the IM umbrella. Cardiology, nephrology, neurology, all sorts of things fall into the IM umbrella. And some of the exams that you're going to have in 4th year are going to be your CCSE. You are technically eligible after completing 24 weeks of your course and passing your shelves with A's. The NPS for that is a 220, which equates to about 62% correct. And Step 2, which again has that $1,000, well, soon to be $925 fee, and the NPS for that is 218. The national average is about 250 right now. And additionally, in order to apply for residency, you have to go through an ECFMG pathway. And the last exam that you'll have to take for medical school is the OET, which is the Occupational English Training Examination, which essentially proves to residency programs that you can um, you can speak English. This is how general core clerkships are graded. So 65% is your CCAMPS, which is your clinical evaluation, clinical clerkship assessment of medical student performance. That is the evaluations that you get at the end of your rotation from your preceptors. They kind of score all sorts of your entire rotation, patient care, knowledge base, all of that. Your SCE is your shelf exam, and your online clinical curriculum consists of a few things, but a majority of it is something called EPEs and EPPs, which is essentially your case logs for determining how many patients you're seeing and that you're seeing the right things, as well as you actually completing your evaluations of the clerkship and the preceptor. For those of you who are international students, I unfortunately do not have very much information on visas or how to go about that. But some of the people that you can talk to are the immigration team, as well as our international students representative on CSGA. Clementina is absolutely wonderful and will be able to at least direct you in the right direction for if you have any questions with visas and that such. And regarding match timeline, as long as you start before July of 2026, which is about a year from now, you shouldn't have any major issues with matching in 2028. Small breaks, a week here or there, even a month here or there, are not going to affect your match timeline very much. But if you start in July or after July, you will very likely be matching in 2029. Some of our major resources, we have the student handbook, which has wonderful information on how to register for exams, what the policies are regarding starting clinicals, breaks within clinicals, and all of that stuff. The clinical website is wonderful. If you have any questions for specific site senators after this, the site senator emails are on there, as well as the clinical WhatsApp. That is a very wonderful resource for after you sit for STEP. You can send some messages in there and really get the feel for how the sites are doing at that time. And people are very responsive in there and will help you out with any of the questions that you have. Some of the questions that were provided by you guys: is Ross getting more clinical sites? In theory, yes. There has been talk from admin about adding clinical sites, some in California, some in other locations. However, it takes a decent amount of time to make a contract and develop an educational curriculum at these sites. I would not expect a new one by the end of the year, but there is a motion to make these new sites. How do loans work in clinicals? So essentially you are given a balance on the first day of that semester for you. So Ross has 3 semesters, a fall semester, a winter semester, and a summer semester. If you were to start surgery, your very first rotation on July 12th, that is when your summer semester starts, and you will finish those 12 weeks, and that is when your fall semester starts. And so you will get a loan disbursement immediately before those rotations start. There is also some information on the clinical website about how financial aid works. And CSGA has spoken to administration at this time regarding the big beautiful bill and kind of the implications for us. They are kind of working through the bill as the financial aid and our legal department to determine kind of what the implications are for us, and are working on getting a kind of information out to us regarding that. And then there was a couple questions about health insurance. Aetna is still available for clinical students if that is something that you want. But I do know quite a few students that switch to a private health insurance when they're back in the United States. Especially if you are at a clinical site that is in or near your home state, you do qualify for Medicare or Medicaid, whichever one, because you are a student and you are not making a certain amount of money. And so I know a lot of students that do go through that. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about those first few slides? All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with our sites. So This is one of the only ones that I'll be presenting. This is California Hospital Medical Center, which is out in Los Angeles. Some of the things that are at this site, every single core is at this site. One of the things to consider about this site is you are not with residents, which means that you are not getting exposure to program directors. There are also electives at this site, and these are scheduled through the portal, so they are very easy to obtain. There are no built-in breaks at this program. However, you do need a car in California because some of the clinics are a little bit far away and the public transport isn't super reliable. The cost of living tends to be expensive. You are in Los Angeles. Most rotations have time to study for the shelves. Other than surgery, the surgery rotation out in California is very intense and you will be working 13, 14-hour days very easily. But you do get to work directly with attending, so that gives you a wonderful opportunity for some letters of recommendation. Matt, if you're here.
Yep, I'm here. So yeah, Mount Sinai in Chicago, pretty great site, not gonna lie. It has all the cores and like pretty much all the electives you can need. So if you're in like family and you don't want to be moving around a bunch, you could do everything in Chicago essentially. And also in Chicago there is St. Anthony's as well, so you have a good list of choices here for electives and whatnot. Little typo, I think in the breaks there, it should be, I think 2 weeks. That's kind of been flip-flopped a couple times now. So when I did my course, we had a 2-week break in December. Then the year after that, there was no break, and now I've heard that there is a break again. So, kind of flip-flopped on that. You might get it, you might not. When looking at your timeline, just consider like if those 2 additional weeks will affect your match timeline at all. If it's not, then it's a nice 2-week break. Need a car? No. Like theoretically, no. There are, I think, like maybe 1 or 2 clinic sites throughout the entirety of your course that might be a little difficult to get to. But other than that, Chicago has great public transportation. It's pretty solid. And just something to note, in Chicago for Mount Sinai, it's 2 locations really. It's Mount Sinai and Holy Cross. They're like sister hospitals. So you'll rotate through both of them. There's residents at both of them. It's like Mount Sinai Family Medicine does a lot of stuff at Holy Cross, and internal and surgery do most of their stuff at Sinai. Cost of living, huge range. It's a major city. You could be in like the West Loop or Fulton Market and pay a bit more because it's a nicer area. Or you can do a little bit further away, like 20 minutes away from the hospital. You can do like Bucktown. That'll be like probably in the low 1,000s. And then, I mean, you can do what I'm doing and just live out in the suburbs where it's way cheaper. You just have to commute a little bit longer. So yes, for time studying for your shelves, it's dependent on the rotation. Honestly, though, like I found that there's more than enough time to study for everything. And like the thing with Sinai that at least from compared to what I've seen and heard at other hospitals, there's a lot of hands-on at Sinai. Like you get to do a lot if you want to do a lot. For example, I mean, for surgery, I know some sites I've heard from friends that have gone there that like it's like a 2-hour day and you're done, you're gone. You don't really do much. Here, you're there a long time. You're going to see a lot. You're going to do a lot. You can do a lot of sutures, lac repairs, pull drains, all that good stuff. Also, a thing on the surgery aspect, I have it on there as the drawback. This year they did accept an IMG into a categorical surgical position, so that's no longer the case what I have there. So they do accept us now, which is nice because you spend a lot of time with the residents, and some of them are great, some of them not so great, but that's just surgeons. Yeah, there's a lot of residencies at Sinai, so you work with a lot of the residents and they know you, and so if you're applying to any of those ones that I like listed, you're gonna probably get matched there. But yeah, other than that, the hospital, the big drawback is the location's not the best. You're a safety net hospital, so you're kind of located in not the best area. There is a gravel parking lot that we use for if you bring a car that's just like directly across the street. There have been some cars broken into. I've only ever heard of like maybe 2 or 3 cases of that from the entire time I've been here, so like a year and a half. And then like there's like 1 instance of somebody getting mugged, but that was like a night shift thing. So not too much to worry about there though. So as long as you're smart, it's not too bad. And there's also a parking garage that you can pay to use. That's all I got.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kim. I am the Trinity Health Oakland site senator. We're in Michigan. So, yes, all of the cores are available. Electives, yes, there's a lot of electives available here. Whenever you get time to, like, whenever it's time for you to start scheduling electives, they'll send you a whole PDF that has every hospital and what electives are offered. Um, are there breaks? So there's two-week breaks. It's 2 weeks in July. It's the week before July 4th and then the week of July 4th. And then in December, there's 2 weeks. It's the week before Christmas and the week of Christmas, but it's also kind of crazy in December because you have designated Ross off holidays. And so, like New Year's Day, I know for sure you're off. And then New Year's Eve, you might be. So it's kind of hectic during December, but I don't know. I think it's pretty good to have those breaks. Do you need a car? The only one that I can think of that you would need a car for is Family Med. It's a little bit, it's probably like a 20-minute drive from the hospital, which kind of stinks. I do know people that do not have a car here and they just carpool with someone because you're in groups of like 12 people for each rotation. Um, and then we do have pretty good public transit if you live in the Pontiac region, and there's just like a bus app that you can use. Cost of living, so Michigan is the cheapest site to live at. There's a lot of housing. You can live in downtown Pontiac. You can live in Bloomfield Hills, which is like one of the fancier regions in Michigan. It's right outside of Pontiac. There's a lot of, there's a big apartment complex that a lot of residents and students live at. It's probably like a 5-minute drive to the hospital. Time to study for shelves. You have a lot of time except for in surgery. And IM, you're normally there from like 6 to 3. Family, you're with your family med physician, so it just kind of depends on what they work. OB, there's for L&D, there's OB days and OB nights. The AM shift is 6A to noon. PM shift is from noon to 6P. And then nights is 6P to 6A. And then for gyne, you just are only there for when you have surgeries. Surgery is just hectic. I mean, it's just known to be a beast of a a beast of a core, but I don't know, surgery is just its own thing. Psych is pretty chill. It's the earliest when you have to be there. You have to be there at like 5:30, but most of the time you're done by like 10 a.m. And then what am I missing? Peds. So peds, you have half inpatient, half outpatient. Inpatient, we're not really a pediatric hospital, so it's mainly just neonates and you're checking bilirubin levels. You're not there for very long, maybe like 4 or 5 hours. And then outpatient, you're just there pretty much the same hours as the attending. The good about this site, I mean, obviously the work hours. You have every Saturday off except for during surgery. You'll have to work one Saturday and one Sunday, which other places you work 12-hour shifts Monday through Saturday. So that's pretty nice. Drawbacks, I am from Mississippi and I do not like the snow. We have snow here. These snow plows start running at 6 a.m. And so if you have to be at the hospital before the roads are plowed, just leave like an hour and a half early, honestly. And then the breaks, some people, to me, I like the breaks because you're literally go, go, go with no break. But if you're trying to like match on a certain day, a month, like pause in your schedule kind of screws things up. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. That's it. Michigan's a lot of fun and the people here are really nice. So I like it a lot.
Hey everyone, Angie here from Danbury. So basically, as everyone said, we do have course and electives here. For electives, they do schedule everything for us if you want to stay here. Break-wise, we do get fall breaks. We get 1 week, I believe, in September, and we do get 2 weeks in December for winter break. So for this area, public transportation is not really a big thing here. So you do need a car. But if you want to use like Lyft or Uber, there's that availability as well. So it's a bit expensive to live out here. So 1 bedroom apartment here will cost you anywhere from 2,200 and up. So for study time, this site is a little bit intense. So you have to be like a self-motivator, self-starter type of person to really do well here. We don't really get any times off for studying besides those breaks that I talked about. So our schedule here, peds and psych are the two that are pretty lightweight. Usually starts about, I don't know, 8 a.m. till about 5 p.m. But everything else is pretty long, like 12 hours, sometimes 24 hours in surgery, OB overnight and stuff. So yeah. For clinical exposure, this is a really great site for studying. You do get a lot of hands-on opportunities. You do get to work directly with attendings and surgeons and so forth. So basically, if you're interested to do a lot, then this is the place for you. For draws, like I said, the program is very good. It's well organized. We have a really good site coordinator here. Her name is Laura. She pretty much does everything for you. You just have to tell her, let her know what you need, and she's gonna get it done for you. When it comes to acceptance, they do accept a lot of IMGs. We have a lot of Rosses here. Some of the attendings here are actually Rossi alums, so that's really helpful. For drawbacks, like I said, it's an expensive area to live. We also only have one admission a year, so I think the deadline is in like May. So if you miss that, then you're not going to be able to start here. And we do have a $800 a month charge for electives for the dorm. So if you're somebody that already lives here and are paying for your apartment, it's kind of a lot to add on the $800. But if you're coming here from somewhere else to do your electives here, they do have dorms here at the hospital for away rotation folks. So yeah, that's Danbury, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Danbury and Norwalk, sorry.
I don't think Tito is here. So, St. John's Episcopal, there are all cores at this site. They do not have breaks. They do have electives, and about half of their electives are scheduled through the like through the website, so they're fairly easy to obtain. You just get the Roth holidays are off, which are the national holidays. There's no like built-in breaks like Michigan. You do need a car for St. John's. Some of the rotations are a little bit far away. I do know quite a few of the residents and some of the students live in an apartment complex called Wavecrest, where that's only about a 5-minute walk from the main hospital, but some of your family medicine rotations and some of your other rotations tend to be a little bit far away. The cost of living, this site is in Far Rockaway, New York, which is a little bit like southeast of Brooklyn. And it does tend to be a little bit expensive, about $2,000 plus for a studio or a 1-bedroom. There isn't a ton of time to study. OB does have dedicated study time. I do know that they get the last week of their rotation off to study for their shelf. Otherwise, it tends to be 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Their surgery rotation is 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. with a little bit of variation on that. Again, like some people said, you have to be dedicated to make time for studying, and I think that goes for most rotations. The clinical exposure is pretty good. There's a diverse patient population there. You get a lot of hands-on exposure. You get to see a lot of pathologies. Some of the draws, St. John's Episcopal does accept Ross students every year, and they do participate in pre-match for all of their programs. Additionally, they are one of the highest paying salaries in the United States for residents. Their first year salary is in the upper 70,000s. And the drawbacks from it is pretty far away from the city. It's about a 40-minute drive to Brooklyn. And then to get into like Manhattan and stuff, you have to take a train and some other stuff. So it is a little bit far away from some of the things that are more fun in New York.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Ngozi. I will be repping Bronx Care today. Um, yes, we do have all cores at the site. Yes, we do have electives. Are there breaks? Let me tweak that a little bit. There are breaks depending on your schedule. Like, I don't know if they're organized by the school or by the hospital, but um, it is possible to have 2 week breaks here and there. Like me, I have a 2 week break coming up this August and then the 2 week break in February, but it might not be the same way for other students. So I guess it just depends on when you start and how your schedule is. Do you need a car? Of course not. You know, we're in New York City, so that's one of the draws, definitely. Um, Cost of living. It is a bit expensive to live here. However, the good part about it is you have the buses and you have the subway. So public transport is very big, as we all probably know. New York City, that's one of the main things that they're known for. If you don't have a car, which a lot of people who live in the city don't, you can just rely solely on the train and the buses because they connect you basically everywhere, even to other states. You can take public transport and go wherever that you need to go. Um, Cost of living, you might find cheaper options. Honestly, it's up to you because if you're willing to live farther away and commute, you might find somewhere cheaper versus if you live closer to the hospital site, that might be a little more expensive, especially for somewhere that, you know, you want to feel comfortable with. You kind of have to pay more to get better quality, but it just really depends on you. Um, what is it? Time to study for shells. Yes, I would say there is a good amount of time. Although me, I haven't completed all my courses yet. I'm only in my third one, but so far so good. Like each rotation has given me enough time, and it does depend on the residents or whoever that you're working with for the day. So if there's like a low flow, or you just tell them, hey, like I have to go study, then they'll be like, oh yeah, sure, go. So you can leave anywhere from like 12 in the afternoon. Sometimes you might leave at 3, sometimes 4. So it really just depends on the flow of the day and the person that you're working with, if they're ready to just allow you to leave, basically. But I'm hearing that surgery, like everyone else, is pretty tough. So yeah, that might not be the story, but it seems like that's the same way everywhere. Clinical exposure, yeah, it definitely is what you make it. But I'm actually enjoying it because one of the draws, I'm gonna kind of tie into that. This hospital has a very, very, very diverse population, especially if you're someone like me that is interested in working with minority populations. This is a very good place for that. The reputation in the Bronx, it is like immigrant city, basically. Like you will meet people from almost every single country, every language. You will meet someone here. And it's a good way to get experience in your clinical practice, working with people from different walks of life, and learning how to treat them and how to interact with people from everywhere, including the residents. This is a very IMG friendly hospital, not just like Caribbean schools, but also like you will see residents who were former surgeons back in their home country, and then they came to Bronx Care to be a family medicine doctor, or they were a dermatologist back in some other country, then they came here to do another field. So you will see a lot of that and get a lot of exposure to different people from everywhere. So I definitely love that about the hospital. Draws, yes, close to Manhattan, so it's easy to get the New York City life that people talk about. You can easily go into town and experience all the fun that the city has to offer. You can connect to the other boroughs easily, and like I said, exposure to the low socioeconomic status. So lots of exposure. Drawbacks, it can be scary at night. I mean, for some people, but it just really depends on you. Like me, like where I live, and I can walk around like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and I don't feel any type of way, but you just have to be alert, because you never know. but it's not like, oh, you can't go out past a certain time. No, it's just be aware of your surroundings and just make sure that you kind of know where you're going. But other than that, don't really have to be scared of coming here. People kind of give it like a bad name, but it's really not different than like any other part of the city. It's all kind of the same to me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Abe. Can you guys hear me? So, in Jamaica, it's a great place to go because it has all accredited course sites. Um, and yes, there are electives. There's a lot of people who come here from the other sites to do electives that there's just a lot of options. We don't have any breaks. Our schedule is pretty much once you start all the way through to the end of the year. But we do have the Ross approved break, so like Christmas, Easter, and things like that. Um, no, you don't need a car for Jamaica, but it is in Queens, and usually in the outer boroughs, people do have cars, but everything is just really accessible through public transportation here. I personally live in walking distance of the hospital, so I walk every day, but you could take the E train, which lets you off right next to the hospital, like physically right next to it. So there's a lot of accessibility. The bus stops right in front of the hospital also, and it's only $2.90 for public transportation, so it's pretty inexpensive. A lot of people I know do take the bus or the train in. There is a parking garage for the hospital too if you really do want to drive. It's about $8 a day for people who work there. And the cost of living, it can really range based off of what you're willing to spend and what is important to you and where you're living. There's places that are like 1900 and then it can go all the way up to 3000 or more. The building I live in, it's pretty varied also, but you get a good bang for your buck out here in Queens. So you can live in like a nice luxury building and only have to spend like maybe like 25, 28K, but you get all the amenities of a luxury building and you'll have like security. Um, if you're not from the city or if you haven't ever lived here before, um, a bunch of these buildings around the hospital do have an unit washer dryer, which is kind of a big deal for New York City. So that's an added benefit of living around here. You can also live in Manhattan and take the E train or the F train all the way in. You have a lot of options. There's also the LIRR too. So if you live in Long Island or somewhere that has the LIRR, you could also take that to the hospital too. But it just kind of depends on what your priorities are for where you want to live. I know Jamaica has like a bad rep with like safety and stuff, but I've been living here for about a year and I feel perfectly safe and I think people just like to exaggerate a lot. But you will be able to get a decent amount for your money out here. And if there's time to study for shelves, I think other than surgery, you can have plenty of time to study. It's just that this is a level 1 trauma. So on your surgery rotation, you're pretty busy. So you do have to learn how to prioritize your time outside of the rotation, or even when you get a couple breaks during the rotation throughout the day to maybe do a couple UWorld questions. But it'll definitely test you on your time management skills. But other than that, I've never felt that there's not enough time to study for the other shelves and have had adequate time to do so. And I do think at this hospital you get a really good clinical exposure. You're directly involved in patient care. Like I said, it is a level 1 trauma center, so it's all hands on deck here. You get to get your hands dirty. The residents here are really good about teaching and they want to teach as long as you show them that you want to learn and you have a good attitude towards it. Um, you will have a lot of opportunities to have direct patient care in each rotation I've noticed personally. And yeah, there's just plenty to do here and plenty to learn. I've noticed that you learn a lot, just like even being on your in the rotation outside of studying too. And some of the draws are that it's a level 1 trauma, and if you're interested in things like surgery, there's just a really good trauma team or emergency. The trauma team is from Weill Cornell, the residents, and the ortho team is from NYU. So you get to learn from really good, reputable schools. And I felt like that really made a difference for me. And you do get a lot of exposure compared to some of the other sites that I've talked to my friends about where they rotated, just because of the nature of it being a community hospital and being a level 1 trauma center in a very populated area in New York City. And then some of the drawbacks I would say is the expense of New York City. It is not a cheap place to live in, so you would have to mentally prepare yourself for that. And that's about it.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Shurjet. I am currently at UMCAP. Do we have all courses at this site? Yes, we currently do. And yes, we also have electives here. They're kind of selective, and sometimes you don't really get the ones that are ACGME accredited. So you have to be careful about that when you're picking the site. If you need to ensure your course or your electives are ACGME accredited. So make sure when you receive that packet, when you're selecting your sites, you go through it in its entirety to make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Do we have any scheduled breaks? Not really. The only breaks we get are the ones that are approved by Ross. Do we need a car? Absolutely. Yes, you will need a car. Even if you live close by the hospital, a lot of the rotations are in different locations. So unless you are scheduled to be at inpatient, rotations, then yes, you can stay close by. But most of the time, if you're placed in an outpatient rotation, you have to drive. The distance is kind of far depending on where you are placed at. So I can go through a brief synopsis of what the rotations here entail. So for family medicine, it's of course 6 weeks, but you can be placed in different locations. So you can either be placed here in Bowie, which is where the hospital is located at. So Bowie, Largo area. You can be placed in Columbia. You can be placed in Laurel. You can be placed in Greenbelt. And there are different facilities. It could be like an urgent care. It could be a family doctor's office. It could be, a clinic. So the different things that they would, or different locations that they will place students at. The hours are your normal, 8 to 5, depending on the location. Sometimes it might go a little longer, but we have complained about long hours. So if you're placed at an outpatient site and you stay past 5 p.m., make sure to let your site coordinator know so we can, annotate that or make it known that it is an issue, because we are trying to make sure students have time to study. Because one thing a lot of students complain about was not having enough time to study for their shelf exams. So we're trying to make sure students are not, abused and, misused. The next rotation I can, shed light on is OB. OB is also 6 weeks. Now with OB, it is broken up into 1 week of night shift, 2 weeks of day shift. Then the other 3 weeks, it can be split between an outpatient clinic or a different center. So depending on how your schedule is, you rotate through all these different things for OB. And OB shifts are very long. They are at least 12-hour shifts, so definitely be prepared for that. During PEDS, you might be inpatient for 2 weeks. So inpatient meaning you'll be here at the hospital at UMCAP. And then for 4 weeks, you would be placed outpatient. That is at, a center or a family clinic that sees mainly, the pediatric population. So it varies with pediatrics. For psych, you are mainly inpatient, but you are inpatient in 2 different locations. You'll spend 3 weeks here at the hospital at UMCAP, and then you'll spend 3 weeks at an inpatient geriatric unit in Baltimore. So that is a drive, and Baltimore from UMCAP is at least an hour. So you do need a car for your psych rotation. Surgery, 12 weeks long. For surgery, it is broken up into 2 groups. So either you will be placed in the outpatient group or in the inpatient group. If you're placed in the inpatient group, you'll be here at the hospital and you'll rotate through a variety of inpatient specialties. So neurosurgery, vascular surgery, anesthesia, orthopedic surgery, surgical ICU, and then everybody does trauma. If you're placed in the outpatient group, you get to do breast, urology, wound care, vascular, and then foot and ankle. And then you also get to do trauma. And your surgical core is 12 weeks. So each subspecialty you get to do for at least 2 weeks or something like that. Now the shift will vary based on the type of surgical cases you are, signed up for or assigned to. So the hours in surgery could be long, could be short. It just varies day to day. Internal medicine, you are also placed in separate groups. So you have, let's see, I think we rotate through each specialty like for 2 weeks. So depending on what group you're in, you rotate through everything. So everybody stays in the hospital. So inpatient for internal medicine, you don't get to go to any clinic for that. Yeah, that is that about our course. For electives, we have, sorry, that's just the hospital. I'm in the hospital right now. For electives, we can do a sub-I here for internal medicine, and we do have residents here for family medicine. So that is one thing that we do see a lot of family medicine residents here. A lot of the other specialties we don't see here a lot. So that is one of the drawbacks here. One of the good things about this hospital, it is very new. So everything is sparkly new. It's a beautiful place. It's in a beautiful location. It's in a safe neighborhood, to say the least, compared to other sites. The neighborhood here is very safe. Cost of living varies. It could be expensive if you want to stay close to the hospital.
Somebody asked about
If you
that.
go further out, it might be a little cheaper for you, but Maryland is kind of on the expensive. Sorry, I did not realize I muted myself. For the cost of living, it could vary. If you want to stay closer to the hospital, it might be a little bit expensive. If you go further out, it might be cheaper for you. But Maryland is also on the expensive side. And then this location is not far from DC. So if you're trying to, go out, see other places, this is a very good place to come to. We're pretty much close to Virginia and DC. So it's easy to get to other places from here. Do we have time to study for shelves? Again, it depends on your rotation. Psych is the one that I would say you have the most time to study for your shelf. All the other ones, it varies. But most of the time you can, if you know how to manage your time wisely, you should have enough time to study. But the ones that might be challenging to study for your shelf exams are surgery for sure, or any other specialties that you are involved in surgery. So OB and surgery might be the ones where you'll be scrambling for time to study, but all the other ones, you should be okay. Clinical exposure. Yes, you get to see a lot here. You definitely get to see a lot. So one thing about clinicals, I would say the more proactive you are, the more benefit you will see. So if you're someone who really wants to learn and you show that you want to learn, people will look out for you and people will definitely show you things. As long as you're showing interest, they will definitely be there for you. And the only drawback, like I said, not all cores and electives here are ACGME accredited. So make sure you're looking at that packet to ensure that if you're interested in something, just check, just to be on the safe side. And of course, if you have any questions, send me an email to the site senator email, and I will do my best to respond on time. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fahima. I am the site senator for CHS. And for the cores, we do have all cores at our site. They are, I believe, all ACGME accredited because the Jackson Health Systems is associated with the University of Miami. And then for electives, we do have electives as well. And when the portal does open, when you get to the end of like your around June, around the end of your third year around June, and you're able to look, I know not all electives, like things that were an option for you to do as a core, like for example, for our surgery core, you have options to choose between certain subspecialties. Like I know trauma is available, plastics, and then you're mandated to do 4 weeks of general, and then urology, and I believe transplant and cardiothoracic, I believe as well. And so you do get a lot of options. And if you end up liking one of those 4-week cores that you have at CHS, you could, and it might not be listed as an elective later on, you could like request from the site coordinator, if possible, if there's any availability in order to try to rotate through those. But most of them that are listed under the portal are what we have at CHS and in that booklet that Ross sends out when it's time to pick your electives. And then for breaks, we follow the same holiday system, but CHS has a 2-week break that you get during the end of July. So that similar to like the break students get in like elementary school and whatnot, the 2 weeks off at the end of July, and then I think it leads into January 5th. So it starts around like the 22nd. Or at least I did for my core, and if I understand correctly, that's still a thing. I don't know if that's going to change in the future, but that is a break you do get built in. I don't know if you can opt out of that. I do know that from other students' experiences that I spoke to, they were able to show up to their clinical site if they chose to, and they didn't want to take that break. But it's built into your schedule. So for example, for me, I had surgery at the time, and I automatically got those 2 weeks off. I did like about 8 weeks of my surgery rotation, and then I was off for 2, and I finished my remaining 4. And then the other regular holidays that are listed that I believe Kim dropped in the chat, those individual holidays you get off as well. And then for a car, you definitely need a car in Miami. One thing you need to prepare for is traffic is not the best here. The best way I would describe it is if you've ever been to Houston, Toronto, horrible. It's like that, where you're kind of sitting. Sometimes you're like cruising on the highway. Other times you're sitting. It doesn't matter what time of the day it is. The only time I haven't seen traffic is late at night, and that's like after 10 p.m. So be prepared for that. And the other reason why you need a car is the Jackson Health System is actually the largest one core site that we have here, and they have multiple hospitals. They have Jackson, Maine, which is near downtown. They have Jackson North, which is in North Miami. They have Jackson West, which is by Doral and like past the by the airport. And then they have Jackson South, which is South Miami. And so those are just the hospitals, but you also, through CHS, you also, because it's through the Center for Haitian Studies, you can be assigned preceptors that have their own outpatient clinic. And so you could be going for surgery, you could be going to Jackson, Maine, and then if you have like a subspecialty, you could be going to a clinic in Jackson North, or you could end up at a clinic in South Miami. And so every few times that you switch your you're starting your next core, you could be somewhere driving 10 minutes, or you could be driving 40 minutes. It all just depends. And they do take into account the site coordinator here. Zareth is really great. He does like send out an email when your new core rotation is starting, asking you where you live, because they do try to consider your commute, but it's not a guarantee. I live basically downtown Miami, and I most often get a lot of South Miami outpatient if I ever do get outpatient, and I'm driving at least like 30 minutes, 25 the least. And it just depends which direction you're going. Sometimes you sit in traffic for a long time. Sometimes you have to prepare to get to your site earlier than you would 4 weeks ago when you were at a different core. And then cost of living, it just depends. Miami can be expensive, or it can be what you make of it. It's kind of like what's up to you and what you, I guess, enjoy in how you like to live your life. You could pay rent as less than $2,000 for sure at some places, and you can pay a lot more than that. I know I pay around like $2,600 for rent, and it's in a decent building. And I've heard some students who pay, but I live like, I think it's decent for me because I'm in a 2-bedroom, but I've heard students who are like paying $2,600 or like $2,900 and they're in a 1-bedroom. And so it just depends on where you want to be and how much you want to pay. And so you have to kind of consider and budget for that. And then I think another thing to put into consideration is because you're not at one specific hospital every single time. You're not guaranteed to be at Jackson, Maine or Jackson North or a specific outpatient. You're going to be moving around in Miami. You have to consider where you want to live based on that as well. And so I put a great consideration into like being like somewhere center. So then it's easier if I have to go in either direction, it's much easier for me versus living somewhere like far out west and then like far out in the suburbs and then driving in all the time. And I don't know which direction I might be going based on my core. So that's one thing to consider for sure. And then time to study for shells. So I know this seems kind of silly saying 2 hours a day, but it just really honestly depends. Sometimes I feel like I spent a lot of hours studying. And sometimes I felt like I could only get 2 hours a day in because I was either tired or I spent a lot of time at hospital or clinic. But you do get time to study. Some rotations better than others. I would say IM in surgery. It just depends on your preceptor and what subspecialty you end up on in those. And so you want to consider, learning how to like work around some rotations where you get such free time. I remember one of my rotations for IM, I think I came in like 2 hours a day. I'd show up at 9, I'd be out the door by 10:30, and so like an hour and a half sometimes. And I had plenty of time to study. And so you take advantage of those moments, and then there'll be times where you're like, oh, you come in at 7 and then you're not out until 7 p.m. And so you have to just like fill in the time where you can. And what's really nice about the longer rotations IM in surgery is they're broken up into like, IM is a bit different. So you can get like weekly assignments to different doctors within the same hospital, or like you can get like 4-week assignments somewhere or 2-week assignments somewhere else. But for surgery, they're broken up into 4 weeks. So you can like study a lot more during one preceptor you have that like, you have short clinic days or short OR days or hospital days. And then for other ones where you're just packed in there 12 hours or more, you want to anticipate for that because you never know what you might end up getting. And a part of that is you'll get your information for where you end up from the clinical director, but you're not 100%, not all of them is listed. It might say you might be at this hospital, but not who the doctor is. So you might not have time to reach out beforehand to know like what my schedule might be in the next 2 weeks or whatnot. So plan for those little gaps that you get where you're not at clinic all day so you can study. And then for OB, you end up doing 4 weeks of an outpatient, or you could be with a doctor who does outpatient and inpatient, and then you end up with 2 weeks of labor and delivery. And they typically, from what I've heard, most students end up getting nights, and the nights are really, I know it's not, students don't really like doing nights, but what's great about it is we only have 2 3-day nights. So when you're on those 2 weeks, you're really only doing 6 days of nights. And so all the other time you can spend studying. And then with outpatient, it just depends where you end up. And then for pediatrics, I feel like out of all my rotations, pediatrics is the one I felt like I spent a lot of time at the clinic. And so that I think it depends on your preceptor. But what I've heard from other students in my own experience is you do like long clinic days, like 9 to 6, and so prepare for that. Or you might end up with someone you're just in there for a couple hours. It just depends on the preceptor. And then for what do I have left? Psych, from what I've been told for psych, everybody's experience is a bit different, but it seems to be a very especially a core that's a little bit more on the chill side, so you don't spend a lot of hours at the hospital or clinic that you're assigned to. And then I am, like I said, I think I spoke of that for surgery. So it just depends on what preceptors you get. And then finally, family I have not. Family I'm on right now, sorry. Family is what I'm on right now, and it depends on where you end up. I'm at Jackson West, and it's it just depends on your preceptor. Mine's I go in for like 4 hours a day. And so how much time you get to study is all based on where you end up, what preceptor you end up with, and what scheduling they have. And that could change within your rotations, especially for the longer surgery and IM ones. And then for clinical exposure, I think you get really well clinical exposure. I feel like a lot of the preceptors I've had are willing to teach. You come across a few where you spend the whole rotation wondering, like, why am I even here? But I think a lot of them do a really good job of trying to teach us. And you do didactics here with all your courses as well, and majority of them are on Zoom. And those are really good teaching opportunities as well. But overall clinical experience I think is great. Surgery, for my entire surgery rotation, you got to scrub into all cases. Whether you love it or hate it, you're gonna be like, just am I getting paid for this? So definitely really great experience on that rotation. I feel is the same, especially if you're in hospital. I haven't had the experience of doing an outpatient, so I don't know what that's like for students. So that you get really good experience with that, and you spend a lot of time in the hospital, and you get to do a lot of evidence-based medicine. And then pediatrics, you learn a lot on that. I would say all the cores are pretty well. There's none I would complain about. And then the drawback, so the draws are, if you like getting a little bit of everything, I think CHS is great, because you're not in like one hospital system. I know Jackson is what we're associated with, but you get outpatient experience. You get to work with preceptors who just do consults. You get to pick subspecialties that you might not be able to see, and those are like, I feel like the best things. And I feel like that's the best thing that I've experienced so far, is being able to see a little bit of all different types of medicine, and not just like in a hospital-based setting or just an outpatient setting. And then the drawbacks, I would say the Miami traffic is the biggest drawback. And then the only other thing with CHS is I feel like you are pretty much a lone student. And like, unless someone starts the same time as you start, and they're on the same schedule, and even though you might have completely different schedules on which cores you do. And so you spend a lot of time with like new students you've never met. Like if you're at especially if you're at Jackson, Maine, you're with like University of Miami students, and you might not see a single Rossi. You do spend time with like SGU students, AUC students. So I feel like that's another big drawback is, you have to like meet a lot of new faces and all that stuff. There isn't really like a connectivity that you hear about, like maybe at like Mount Sinai, where like all the students are kind of like all rotating with each other. The majority of them are Rossies, and they have like a space for student lounge and that kind of stuff. So those are kind of the drawbacks. It's like the experience of feeling like a student isn't really there, and you're almost like clocking into work and you're showing up to your clinic each and every day. And so that's the one thing that I feel like is a big drawback. But yeah.
All right. I don't see Manali. Okay, so Miami Rescue Mission, this site does have all of the cores as well as all of the electives. There are no built-in breaks at this site. It is a straight-through site. Just as what Fahima was saying with Miami, you do need a car here. Miami Rescue Mission is very similar to CHS in the fact of you'll be going to some outpatient clinics and kind of running around all over Miami. And so you'll need a car for that for sure. Miami does have public transport, but it's not super reliable and it's often not super close to where the clinics are. Miami works through like Broward and some of the other hospitals. A lot of your rotations are going to be outpatient, and you do serve an underserved population at Miami Rescue Mission. The cost of living it's Miami. It's going to be like 2,200 plus on average. It also depends on where you live. There are some places that are a little bit further away from the city that tend to be a little bit cheaper, but again, then you're going to have to be sacrificing your drive. Overall, it's an 8 to 5 site. You'll be mostly outpatient, other than surgery and a little bit of IM. So it's very workable hours. You do get to see a lot of different hospitals as well as clinics, and you get to work with a lot of different residents from different places. So I know Broward has an emergency medicine residency that a lot of students from our school have actually managed to get into. So you get to go to a lot of hospitals, see a lot of people, meet a lot of attendings, have a lot of opportunities for letter writing. The only kind of drawback is even though you do get to go to all of these hospitals, not all of them do have residencies, which can be a drawback because that does limit your interactions with them and kind of limits you on like residency opportunities of places that you've rotated at.
Hi everyone, my name is Manali. I'm the Larkin Site Senator. So Larkin is kind of situated in or located in South Miami area, and it offers 4 cores. It offers surgery, IM, psych, and family medicine. They're all ACGME accredited. So they all have residency programs as well. So that's a really good benefit. For OB and PEDS, which they don't offer, you would probably be like doing rotations through Miami Rescue. That's kind of the track. If you're at Larkin, then you can do rotations or core rotations at Miami Rescue for the ones that they don't offer. At Larkin, it's like a smaller hospital, but it has a lot of residents. It's very IMG friendly, which is really cool because you meet a lot of, there's like Rossi's there as well, and then also international IMGs there. They offer a bunch of different types of electives for 4th years. You can like apply for them, and it's pretty easy to get the rotation that you want for 4th year. Are there breaks? There are Ross, like they basically accept any holiday that Ross approves. You can just tell the preceptor or residents that like, hey, my school gives this day off, and they're pretty chill about it. It's very like it's not a strict hospital. People are understanding that it's like a student schedule, and people are busy, like in student life, I mean. Do you need a car? You definitely, I would say if you lived close to Larkin, you don't need a car, but most of the time, because you're living in Miami, it is very beneficial if you have a car of your own, you can travel anywhere. And then, for rotations that aren't offered through Larkin, just like OBGYN or PEDS, you'll be going through Miami Rescue and you will probably need to travel for those. But I would definitely get a car for Miami. Cost of living. So for like usually this is like kind of average. If you're getting like a 2 bed, 2 bath, it's around like 2,600 or 2,200. And that's like considered average. But it also depends on where you're living in the city. If you're living near like, Brickell, which is like the main city area, it's gonna be even more expensive than that. But if you live in like, kind of in the suburbs a little bit north, of Miami, then you can have a little bit of like a cheaper rent. But then you're also, going to be driving a little bit more. And in Miami, there's a lot of traffic, so you have to really account for that before you leave for rotations every single day. Especially for Larkin, if you're like living up north near Hollywood or Davie and you're going to Larkin, it's going to be like an hour to like get there. If you leave at like 7 a.m., which is prime time, for people to go to work. Is there time to study for shelves? There is definitely a good amount of time. Most rotations are basically like 8 hours or less. They're very chill. Like you can also study there as well. The hospital itself and the residents and the attendings are not that strict, to be honest. Clinical exposure. There is a good amount of exposure to clinical cases because the most of the population is kind of like lower socioeconomic status. So there's different types of cases that are seen, which is pretty cool. Also, there is the type of people, or I guess the patient population, mostly they speak Spanish. And then there's some also Creole patients in there. And then obviously English too. But mostly patients speak Spanish. So if you know Spanish or, you are a native Spanish speaker or want to practice your Spanish, it is a great site to go to. It's a great way to practice as well. And then, oh yeah, I would say for psych, there are a lot of psych patients that are admitted there, and I even did my psych core there, and it was actually a really good experience to learn, like the residents, the attending, and obviously the different psych patients that you see in real life. Yeah. So draws wise, like I said, it's a great opportunity to practice Spanish. And then really good for psych. It's very IMG friendly, not strict hours. It's a very chill hospital, honestly. Drawbacks, the hospital is smaller and it has a little bit less funding than other sites. It is located in South Miami, so it can be far if you live, a little bit up north. I would say like living in Doral, like I used to live in Doral, which is I think a good middle spot between like Larkin and for Miami Rescue even, and Cleveland Clinic as well. Um, what else about the hospital that I can share? I think that's about it. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Talia. I am the assistant site senator for Cleveland Clinic. The head site senator's name is Alberto Madrid. He is in another speaking engagement currently at the moment, so I'm kind of filling in for him. But we both work together here at Cleveland Clinic. So some information about Cleveland Clinic. It's about like it's a decently big hospital. We have about like 280 beds here. They are a big like referral center, so you get to see a lot of cool cases here. Some really neat things about the hospital is we do have a lot of Rossi alumni here, so it's nice to engage with them, and especially those who will be directly involved in your grades and your MSPE writing, like the program director for our internal medicine actually is a Rossi alumni. So those are just some quick little things. So regarding cores, Cleveland Clinic only has internal medicine and general surgery. So those are the only two cores that are offered here at the site. So, kind of like Larkin or Miami Rescue Mission, like you'll do other cores someplace else, and then you'll come to another place to fulfill the requirements that weren't fulfilled at that respective site. Do we have electives? Yes. So we have a variety of electives. To sign up for those electives would be through, some are actually offered through our MyRoss portal. Majority of them are going to be through Cleveland Clinic directly, where you will fill out the form and then submit the request, and then you will find out from Cleveland Clinic themselves whether you are approved or not. We have a ton of cool electives like pulmonary. Of course, we have all our sub-Is. I will be applying orthopedic surgery, so we have orthopedic surgery rotation here. Unfortunately, there's no residency program for that specifically, but there's fellowship. There's still opportunity to get letters of recommendation and whatnot. We do have like breast surgery here, gyne surgery. Like there are some really cool rotations that you're able to do here. Transplant surgery, all of that. Do we have breaks? Yes. So we have like Ross holidays. So specifically with that, let's say like for Christmas, so you will get Christmas Day and Christmas Eve off. And you will probably have to report the next day. So I started my general surgery rotation during that Christmas time. So I had Christmas Eve, Christmas Day off, and then I had to report back in the next day because I think that was like a Thursday or something like that. So you do get those respective days off, but it's not like you'll get a week off for like Christmas break per se. So you just get the day of that holiday. In need of a car, kind of just like everyone who has said, you know, you'll need a car in the Miami or South Florida area. Same thing here. You'll need a car for transportation. You know, nice thing about Cleveland Clinic, it is located right off of a big highway, the I-75. So, you know, it's easy to get to quickly. Not as much traffic as you would experience in the Miami area. Cleveland Clinic is located in Weston. So like some nice places kind of live around here would be like maybe Pembroke Pines, Miramar, or even Davie, Plantation. Those places are kind of close, within like a 10, 15-minute drive. I live north of here in like Coral Springs, Parkland area. I have about like a 25-minute drive, but it's straight highway all the way down. So I don't really meet too much traffic or as what you would experience in like Miami per se. But you do need a car because unless you live within the city of Weston itself, which can be very, very, very expensive, because a lot of the living areas here within Weston are like homes and houses within gated communities, so they can be very, very expensive. So unless you live there and you could like Uber back and forth or something, there's really not much like public transportation that would be able to take you around. Again, cost of living is kind of just like what everyone has said, you know, to try to live closer to your respective site area that you're going to be rotating. It may be more expensive. You know, trying to live further, you'll have that benefit. So if like living in some place like, you know, Lauderdale or Fort Lauderdale or something like that, or Lauderhill or some area in that area, it might be cheaper, but again, you still have to have the commute of driving 20 to 25 minutes. But again, like Fort Lauderdale is literally a straight shot highway, about like 20, 25 minutes. So you won't meet too much traffic there, as well as there's also the tollway that you're able to take the expressway. Time to study for sales. Yes. So you during IM, you have a lot of time. So you're gonna be working about like 45 to 55 hours per week. And so kind of like what a day would look like for internal medicine is, you know, so here at Cleveland Clinic, your IM rotation is going to be that 12 weeks. So 3 out of those 12 weeks, you're going to be rotating outpatient, and then the rest of those weeks are filled inpatient with rotating something here we have like colored teams. So you're gonna be rotating with like different attendings, and then you also have 2 weeks rotating through intensive care unit. And so you'll be on the floors with your like color units, and you'll be with different attendings. So when you're on the floors, your rounds, some attendings like to start rounds at 9 o'clock. Some may start at 8:30. So, you know, you'll be put in a group chat with different residents, and they'll shoot you a text like, hey, rounds are going to be at like 8:15 today. So most of your days are going to start, you're coming in around like, you know, 6:30, 7 o'clock, you're prepping for your patients. Then you go on rounds are lasting, you know, whatever, 3 hours or 4 hours or so. And after that, you have didactics. So didactics will start around noon. You'll bring your lunch, and, you know, you'll have, whether it be that day, the residents are playing Jeopardy, and, you know, you're split into teams and you're having that fun day playing Jeopardy, or they're going over questions, or there's a lecture going on, you know, regarding whatever topic is for that month. So you'll be involved with that. And then usually after that, you kind of like ask around your residents, like, is there anything else to do? or you go check up on your patients, or, you know, if there's any procedures going on, let's say you're in ICU, if there's any procedures going on, you know, they're doing a bronch on a patient, you go see that or whatnot. So usually most of the time you may get dismissed around maybe 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock ish. And then to head home to have the rest of that time to study. Granted, as well, in between all this time, there also can be some time to study. You know, you go see your patients after didactics. It takes you like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You don't hear anything from the residents, but they say, hang out until I tell you to go. There's time for you to study. So you can do things in between then. So that's kind of how it will look a little bit for IM. So you definitely, there's 100% time to study, as well as built into our IM program. We do have like student-led lectures. So you'll be in a cohort of like you and like 9 other students, so 10 total. And each one of you guys will pick a topic and then give like about a 10 to 15-minute presentation on that topic. So everything about it, you know, diagnosis, differentials, what to look for, treatment plan, everything like that. And one resident will sit in on each presentation and just give feedback. And it's just an opportunity for all of us to learn the topic and better prepare for our shelf. And so that's kind of a quick overview of like internal medicine. Now, when it comes to surgery, with surgery, it's kind of dependent on the specialty. So we rotate for surgery through general surgery, whether you're on the minimally invasive team or you're on the hepatobiliary service. So you're going to do 3 weeks of that. Then after that, there's like 3 weeks of urology. You have 2 weeks of vascular surgery. You have 1 week of surgical ICU, and then you also have 3 weeks of colorectal surgery. So not in that order, but those are different areas of specialty that you're going to rotate through. And so depending on your service, hours may be more extensive versus more lenient in giving. So for me, when I started on, the first service I was on was hepatobiliary, you know, my first 3 weeks. Because it was like Christmas time, we missed out on some time, but we did hit the ground running. My first day, we had 6 surgeries and I scrubbed into every single one. So, you know, here at Cleveland Clinic, there's you will be scrubbing into every surgery. You will like be doing a lot of hands-on work. You'll be suturing patients. You know, here at Cleveland Clinic, we have been doing the last, I think 2 cohorts that we've had. We've done suture labs. So, you know, you'll be able to practice and familiarize yourself, as well as work with residents that you will be working in the OR with, coming to these suture labs and being able to practice your skills. And so it's very, very, very hands-on. Now, like moving on to urology, urology depends. The attendings, it's a little more lax. It also depends on attending. Sometimes OR days, attending has like two cases, and then you're kind of done for the day. Or like, you know, clinic days, he has like 30 patients. So you're seeing patients from 8 to 5 or even 5:30. So that day we meet a little more heftier, but it's still almost like an 8 to 5. So it kind of really just depends on which specialty you're rotating in. Colorectal surgery will be a little bit difficult to study. The hours are kind of like general surgery, very, very long. The cases can be very, very long, but like I had mentioned earlier, Cleveland Clinic is a referral center. So there's the opportunity to see some very, very rare cases, as well as some very interesting cases, which gives you the opportunity to either write up a case report, try to get involved in research, you know, talk a lot with these attendings and build a relationship, and the opportunity arises for letters of recommendation. I was able to get a letter of recommendation on my urology rotation, and I know quite a few of my colleagues have, you know, built a great relationship here at Cleveland Clinic and being able to have the opportunity to get letters of recommendation as well. And so I kind of dabbled a bit into clinical exposure, but yeah, I feel like it's definitely excellent. Like, you know, like I said earlier, we have a broad spectrum of like super rare cases that we could have. And then of course, you'll see some stuff that you'll kind of see in your everyday, like in internal medicine, managing like hypertension and diabetes and things like that. So some of the draws, so Ross alumni like hold administrative here, which is what I kind of mentioned earlier. So our program director for our internal medicine program is a Ross alum. There's a lot of Rossies. One of the directors of the pulmonary critical care service is a Ross alum. We have a lot of Ross attendings. We have a lot of Ross residents here within the internal medicine program. So it's a great opportunity to network with some fellow Rossies and then build that, relationship with them. And then, yeah, again, we have like attending positions, plenty of electives, and this is like a big name hospital as well. Some of the drawbacks is, you have to do some of your other cores, either at Miami Rescue Mission or, Larkin. So even though you are here for the lengthiest bit of your rotations, 2 12-week rotations, so 24 months, almost like 6 months or so to build that relationship, they don't here offer any pediatrics or really OB-GYN or psych or anything like that. So that's, I would say, is the main drawback to here. But all in all, Cleveland Clinic is an amazing place. And, I am so grateful to be able to rotate and to also be a site senator for this location.